All right, guys, what's up? It's Jack, and welcome back to another video. So we're going to be watching and breaking down today's update number 5 for Splitgate 2 because, you know, there's going to be the first relaunch playtest. And on top of that, this was the easiest and fastest way for me to simultaneously give feedback in the middle of all this while simultaneously just kind of watching it, and just a lot less time consuming in terms of editing and stuff like that. Just made all the sense in the world. And I have seen this, you know, after work today. I was listening to it on my way home. Lots of exciting stuff, and minor spoiler alert, it has a little bit to do with what I mentioned in my last video. And thanks 1047 Games. Now nobody's going to believe me when I say I'm not sponsored, because they're going to think that I knew something, and therefore that's why I made the video or whatnot. But that's not the case at all. It was just an idea. Thanks to another video that I saw from somebody else that was made years ago about another video game. But anyway, without further ado, let's get into this. And no, I chose not to put a face cam on here because I'm just not going to torture you guys that way. So let's get right into this, because we got a lot of feedback to give. Because when I was listening to this earlier, I was like, okay, I have feedback to give on this, feedback to give on that, and stuff like that. So let's get right into it.
First thing to announce is that we're doing our first public playtest for our relaunch this Friday, August 29th, and Saturday, August 30th. Friday is at 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and Saturday is at 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Pacific.
Now, I would suggest, now obviously these times are probably the peak times in terms of when the game is played. It makes sense. Friday and Saturday, it's the weekend. Starting in the afternoon and going into the evening makes sense for 3 hours, and then another 3 hours a little bit earlier on a Saturday, because people have more free time, because most people are not working. It just makes sense. Although I do wish this was longer. I think playtests should last longer than just 3 hours, but I guess they have a specific reason for doing that. I think if I remember correctly, there's a little bit something specific about this playtest that's a little bit limiting, and we'll cross that bridge when we get there towards that part of the video. But yeah, I just wish these lasted longer. But I'm assuming 3 hours is all they need, or a total of 6 between 2 days, in order to get the maximum data that they need, or the minimum data that they need in terms of the kind of feedback. And I'm assuming they're going to want to do this quickly for every playtest, and to get multiple playtests within a short period of time, so that way they can get the most bang for their buck in a short period of time, make the changes, get the feedback, and make it happen. So let's keep going.
Pacific Standard Time, and we can't wait. We have a lot of changes that we're gonna go ahead and dive into, and of course we can't wait to hear your feedback and your thoughts when you have access to checking the game out. In regards to public testing, and you know, obviously everyone knows we've headed back to beta. Ian, I wanted to ask, what is the purpose for these public playtests, and why do you think going back to beta is the right path to success?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, the purpose of these playtests is really to get your feedback, the community's feedback. That's how we built Splitgate 1. That's, you know, people might not remember, we actually launched Splitgate 1 in 2019, didn't have a lot of success, and spent 2 years just constantly iterating with the community's feedback in mind. And after 2 years, all of a sudden, wow, the game's actually really good. And when we did the relaunch with Splitgate 1, it really took off. And so we're running it back. That's how we got to where we're at today. That's the reason we're able to work on Splitgate 2. And I think we sort of shied away from that, which was the wrong move with Splitgate 2, where we were sort of keeping things in secret, wanted to build hype. And that's just not the 1047 way. And so ultimately, these playtests are about getting feedback, making sure the changes we're making are good ones that the community wants, and really just keeping us on the right track.
Now, I actually did not know that Splitgate 1 had a relaunch. So this is literally history repeating itself. And then obviously, once they relaunched, I think that is when the game really got to a point to where it became a lot more popular for like a few months, to where they needed more servers and stuff like that. And I remember everybody was talking about it. All the content creators that I was following were talking about it, from what I can remember. And that's how I became aware of the game. And I think it was originally on PC, and then they eventually expanded to console. I think that was part of what they did on relaunch, if I'm not mistaken, because I do remember hearing somewhere that I think it was only originally on PC, and then they expanded it to console, if I'm not mistaken. So well, it's good that they're retracing the steps of Splitgate 1, because they did have their majority of success from that. So that's good. So let's keep going.
I love how you said that, the 1047 way. That's exactly what we're going back to. And the whole studio is very excited for this.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about what some of the players will be expecting in the playtest. You know, we've made a lot of changes, and everything will be discussed in detail here. But to get started, let's go ahead and talk about changes to factions and what Splitgate will become moving forward. Josh, I'll go ahead and throw this to you.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah. Really stoked to talk about this. So, like Ian mentioned, we're going to be diving into the playtest to try a bunch of new changes. And the first one is some changes to factions, right? And so the first thing I wanted to do is sort of talk about the original intention of factions so everybody understands like where we were coming from and what we were trying to accomplish with them. And so when we set out to do, to create Splitgate 2, there was a desire to create like meaningful variety in the way that you're taking engagements, right? And so factions emerged as kind of this way to create interesting asymmetry in combat, where players have different tools at their disposal. And so the hypothesis is that like as players lean into their play style, each game is going to feel fresh because you're going to feel people who have different you're going to encounter people with different kits and different play styles. What we've seen post launch is that the current philosophy around factions has created this sort of rigidity around play styles, and sort of actively getting in the way of player fun. We got a lot of feedback about factions. It's been a lot of discourse both internally and externally, and so we've gotten a lot of feedback from our players, that it can be a very frustrating experience to want to play a specific way or with a weapon you like, but you can't because you're sort of blocked by these faction limitations.
And just like I mentioned in my latest video, it's a missed opportunity, especially when it comes to pubs, when you've got all these things at your disposal. Like for instance, I've mentioned that the guns are good, they feel good and stuff like that, the perks and stuff like that, and even the factions and stuff like that. It's like, if you can't mix and match, I feel like there's like a mixed opportunity, because again, there are so many different players with different play styles and everything like that. So literally taking the shackles off in a pub scenario, right? Pubs, not necessarily competitive, but pubs, I think really makes the game more in depth, because there's more options for the player. And when you give every single player more options, you basically kind of make the game more accessible to more people of different play styles and different preferences when it comes to loadouts and the way they play, et cetera, and how they personally want to mix and match, whether they're more passive or more aggressive in terms of their play style or somewhere in between. This is a good thing, in my opinion. So let's keep it going.
And so with that in mind, for this playtest, you're going to see we've removed factions, right? And we've sort of reimagined the loadout system with the intention of allowing players to have like the maximum amount of flexibility with all of these tools in the toolbox. So players can really hone in on the way that they like to play.
Follow up with players being able to play how they want to play. When we are saying we remove factions, what exactly does that mean? A bit more detail there.
It manifests in a couple of main ways, right? I think the first means we're going to be lifting all the sort of loadout restrictions around weapons and equipment. If you want to run the Arrows carbine and a sticky grenade, that's possible. Players will be able to sort of tailor their kit to match their style. And that also means we're sort of revisiting perks. These were previously tied to factions. There was quite a lot of overlap depending on the factions. And so we've sort of done away with some of the redundant perks to ensure that every one that you select is different than the others. But it also means it opens up an opportunity for us to allow players to have an extra perk slot, which we're really excited for players to start to try. So it allows.
Okay, so now we have 3 perks to choose from. However, you can't mix and match however you want, and that's where the balancing takes into play. So that's interesting. So it's actually very similar in a way, like as we saw like just now. I guess the perks, you've got like 6 to choose from one area, 6 to choose from another. So there has to be a balance. You can't mix and match however you want, which is fine, which is what I kind of suggested, like, but at the same time, I also said 2, maybe a maximum of 3. So this is more balanced. And on top of that, they've actually removed factions, which I think is very interesting. So I guess they're just going to be skins now. And again, as they go on in detail, we'll talk more. So let's let them talk.
Allows even more flexibility in sort of tailoring your experience. I want to clarify, you'll still see sort of unique perks to each of these slots, kind of similar to how it exists now. but across 3 slots, you'll be able to have more sort of variety in the ways that you hone in on your play style. And then I guess the sort of big sort of elephant in the room is faction abilities, right? And so this has been probably one of the biggest things we've heard from the community since it released. It's been a big point of discussion both in the community and internally in the studio. Obviously, abilities add this kind of interesting texture to fights sometimes, but I think more often than not, they end up being kind of frustrating to play against, right? And so if you couple that with the fact that they're just generally sort of difficult to balance because you can, like, small changes can swing them wildly from useless to this sort of like I win button where you just pop it and then you can just win a fight. That I think that is sort of at odds with what we believe Splitgate, what makes Splitgate Splitgate.
Now, I wanted to really address this whole I win button thing. This is a problem this is one of the problems that I had going back to Black Ops 4. When they reintroduced the specialists from Black Ops 3, they not only brought them back, but they buffed the hell out of them. And on top of that, you had more things going on in terms of what the specialists can do, right? Which was, again, in that game, in all essence, was an I win button, right? So you could be on a streak, you could have superior gun skill, but yet somebody who doesn't have superior gun skill to you, or is, would basically be able to get easy free kills on other people just because their timer went up and they have this really, really powerful specialist ability to where if you were to get into one-on-one engagement with that person, you're basically dead unless they're like, unless like their thumb slipped off or something like that. So I definitely see the whole I win button problem, and I totally get it. I believe that everybody, regardless of skill level, is very capable of getting kills, right? And obviously the more you play, the better you get, et cetera, et cetera. So it's like, there has to be that kind of skill gap as opposed to an I win button. I know why I win buttons exist, but in my opinion, respectfully speaking, it's overkill. So I'm actually glad that they went in this direction. So let's keep it going.
I think the biggest thing we've learned is just how different playing the game out in the wild is versus playing it like internally for an hour every week. That's something that we really enjoyed early on in development, but the problems with the abilities started to occur as you start to play the game out in the wild. We saw it with the launch of Ranked. Everybody's going Sabrasqual, and it's a really frustrating experience. Or Meridian wall hacks. Like, it's fun for me if I can see you through a wall, but it's not fun for the other player on the receiving end of that to constantly be wall hacked. That's not the purpose of Splitgate. Splitgate was always meant to be about gunplay, movement, and portals.
Thank God. I really don't need to say more. No wall hacks. Thank God.
And so we're trying to get back to our roots in that sense. Let's kind of remove the abilities in the factions. We've got all this great weapon variety, so let's lean into that and let you pick and play the way you want to play. So if you want to use a Sabrask assault rifle with a Meridian pistol and this, the slide perk, my personal favorite, with, extra melee damage, etc. We want to let you play the way you want to play. And so this gives you...
The slide perk is one of my personal favorites as well. It's Ian's personal favorite, but it's one of my personal favorites. I can't. Speedy Killer is another personal favorite of mine, and going back and forth between those two, very interesting. But anyway, let's let him talk.
That variety removes that frustrating ability, and I think ultimately, I think it's good for the game. But the community will have to tell us if we're on the right path.
That's where a lot of surveys.
Ian, in my humble opinion, you are on the right path. You've introduced a different type of balance, which will be unique to the game, while simultaneously keeping the foundation of what Splitgate makes Splitgate. And at the same time, you're allowing players to literally choose, like giving them more flexibility in choosing how they want to play, because players choose to play your game, right? So if a player chooses to play your game, but at the same time, they're kind of like, they're forced to pick like a weapon that's tied to a specific faction, or specific perks that are tied to a specific faction, stuff like that, to where they're limited and they can't mix and match exactly how they want, that can take a percentage of fun out of the game, because a player is forced to play a certain way, which, again, options are one thing, especially in the year 2025, as long as they're balanced. is something that will only appeal to more players, both that are a part of Splitgate community as well as new players alike. And again, this is for pubs. In ranked, you could do something a little bit closer to home to Splitgate, in my opinion, the original Splitgate, to where you have even starts and more limitations and stuff like that. But in my opinion, this is 100% a step in the right direction, especially if it's balanced properly and if it plays well, which time will tell.
Come in, a lot of feedback. We have a beta hub that'll be linked down below in the video for the description, our Discord, that sort of thing as well. So please get involved there if you have things to share. Josh, last time you were on the stream, I believe we discussed having less emphasis on round-based modes. Now that we're a little further into development, I'd love to hear your thought process on this.
Ian touched on this a little bit, right? Like your philosophy before launch and after launch is oftentimes different, right? And so while we like a lot of the round-based modes that, you know, we think offer a lot of, you know, dynamism to the way that the game is played, we also hear the feedback from players that they were looking for a more sort of classic Splitgate arena experience, right? Where you can kind of jump in and start fragging out. And so for us, as we looked at like, okay, when we go to relaunch, like what is that core Splitgate experience? And while we're still going to have round-based modes, we're sort of pushing our core experience towards those, you know, fan favorites like, you know, King of the Hill, Domination, Team Deathmatch, some of these more straightforward arena-based game modes that.
Absolutely. I mean, you don't really want to try to alter or fix something that isn't broken in any way. Sometimes simplicity is really good. There's nothing necessarily wrong with wanting to change something, but when you're looking at modes that everybody's familiar with, whether they're super casual or super hardcore, anybody that plays first-person shooters knows Team Deathmatch, Domination, and, you know, Hot Zone, which is basically kind of like Hardpoint or whatnot. People are familiar with King of the Hill. These modes have been around for a long time and for good reason, and there's really no need to essentially change them. It's not something that's broken. And again, at the end of the day, my opinion is, even though Splitgate is a unique experience, and that kind of, because of the portals or whatnot, kind of bends the rules just a little bit, especially if balanced right. You don't want it to bend the rules like to the point to where it breaks the game, right? Which is what they're working on fixing right now. But ultimately, at its core, Splitgate is still a traditional FPS / arena shooter. It's a little bit more of a hybrid this time, but again, when you put it down to what it is, it's still something that is rooted in tradition at its very core. So doing those traditional game modes is not only a good call, but familiar. And again, it fits Splitgate 2 very well, in my opinion.
Obviously really resonate with our players. And so for us, I think you'll see this in the playtest. We're going to have a lot more emphasis on those one round jump in and start slaying out. But then you'll also see things like, you know, Split Ball, a game mode that we really, really love. And we're going to have those round-based things, but we do want to push some of that, you know, faster get in game type of experiences into our core experience.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. You know, I think one of the biggest changes, it's not actually in this particular playtest, but one of the things we've committed to for the relaunch is a playlist selection. And so by having that, we can have more modes. So for the players who want that traditional Splitgate 1, King of the Hill, Domination, TDM, like, great, pick those. You don't like Split Ball, you don't have to play it. But if you're more a fan of the, you know, Split Ball, fast paced, but with rounds and breaks in between, like, we're still going to have that. And just, again, it's whether it's giving you more choice with your loadouts or giving you more choice with the modes you want to play, like, that's a big part of this relaunch.
That's a huge win. A lot of people, I cannot tell you how many people have told me that they've stopped playing the game, right? Because they couldn't choose the game mode that they wanted to play, and therefore they weren't enjoying the game, despite the fact that there were so many elements of the game that they liked, but there were certain game modes that they just didn't want to play. For instance, some people just said, I just want to play Domination, or I just want to play this. I know that throughout the course of history, Team Deathmatch is the most popular game mode across all first-person shooters. But at the same time, there are also other game modes that have become very popular over the course of time, over the last, I'd say, 10 years, right? So I think that's important that those also take priority, because it is significant. So again, huge W. Good job, team.
And we're excited about it.
Yeah, I know a lot of people were just hooping and hollering about being able to choose what you want to play. That was one of the most things we saw, and it made an impression, absolutely. So we're very happy to be able to do that for the community. I was gonna go into updated portal walls, but we've been chatting about split ball, so I think maybe we should just continue with that. We're making some changes to split ball. Ian, you want to go ahead and chat about what we're going to be playtesting?
Super simple. I mean, we put out a Twitter poll actually, I don't know, what, a week ago or so, asking should the player with the split ball, should they be able to portal? With Splitgate 1, we went through so many different iterations of capture the flag. And we
Just 1 second. I'm sorry to interrupt, Ian, but I had to say this. When you look at that poll, right, and obviously one was a little bit more popular than the other, you can tell already that, like, just before they keep going here and giving us, specifics, that right there is proof that this game is community driven, which is extremely, extremely important, which is also why it's so important that you guys mention whatever you have to say in the comment section, because they are watching. I've said this time and time again. It's not about me, it's about the game. It's like, fuck my channel. It's about this game continuing being, out there and continuing to evolve and continue to be around for years and years to come. That's number one. And the community ultimately decides which direction the game's going to go. All right.
could never get it right. And we went back and forth. Can you portal with the flag? Can you go through a portal? Can you go through a teammate's portal? Can you sprint? Right. And it just never really worked. And so split ball was our answer to what if we made a capture the flag style mode leaning into portals. Ultimately, I think we didn't quite get there. I think a lot of players have recognized it's fast and it's nice that you can kind of score and then immediately you're at risk that the other team can take it back. But being able to portal, I mean, maps like Stadium or even Zenith, like you can score within seconds. And we don't think that's healthy for the game. We think it's frustrating. And we saw actually with the Twitter poll, it was pretty divided, but in general, I think slightly more preferred the idea of not being able to portal with the split ball. Bottom line, though, we're testing it. And so that's one of the things we're going to test in this play test. But we got to play it. We got to see, does it work? Does it not work? Should we just keep it as is?
Now, I've got some specific thoughts about this, as well as some possible, like one really great idea that could possibly work for the devs. So, devs, please listen. And again, this is something that would obviously have to be tested as well, but just something in theory. But here's the thing: like, obviously, the poll was very close between people wanting to portal and not wanting to portal. And yes, I mean, you're definitely right. People can score within seconds, especially on those smaller maps. Absolutely. But my suggestion is, since it was so close, right, between people saying no and people saying yes, what if we had a happy medium? And what I mean by happy medium is, what if you gave the player who has the ball the ability to pass it to a teammate that might be in a better position to score? Granted, if you have the ball, you can't portal, right? But if you have the ability to pass it to a teammate, now granted, the passing would have to be balanced, right? You can't just pass it across the map to somebody who's right next to the wall or something like that. I mean, granted, even if you could do that, you still have the opposing team with jetpacks that can intercept that pass. But regardless, I think if you get it, I think that being able to pass the ball would be a happy medium. And I think it would still keep things competitive because, again, a player still has to run as opposed to portaling to score. So maybe that might be something. I mean, granted, it could still very well play very well like this, especially as far as the competitiveness of the game mode is concerned. But if you have the ability maybe to pass the ball, it might increase the fun factor, or it might just be something that you could consider adding in for pubs, but maybe keeping out of competitive, or just letting the pros choose as far as whether or not they want that in competitive. But just in theory, the first thing that came to mind is, what if a player could pass the ball? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, in Halo, they can kind of juggle the flag and capture the flag. But it's like, what if players could actually kind of pass the ball, but more efficiently, and something that gets built into the passing mechanic in this game? Just a thought.
Some people really like it the way it is. So we'll see how that goes.
I'll just jump in here. We've been doing some testing internally, and I think we're really encouraged by some of the things we're seeing early on. It started to feel much closer to its, the mode that it's derived from, where it's a much more team-based experience where you're protecting the runner. And some of that gets a bit lost when you're able to sort of solo hero the ball through portals,
Yeah.
and so we're seeing a lot of really positive things internally, but again, internally versus externally are very different things, and so we got to get it into your hands. But we're excited to try that out as well.
Speaking of excited to try things, again, Josh, last time you were on here, we talked a bit about uh, portal updates. Making the right changes, not just adding more, but making sure that they have meaning. Uh, I played Frontier the other day of the playtest. Was a lot of fun. Not sure if we want to discuss what maps are going to be in the playtest. I know we have a few lined up for us, but anything you want to add there?
Yeah, and just top line for anyone who didn't see that previous video. Just wanted to give a bit of clarification on what it means when we say adding more portals to maps. And I said this in the last one, but our intention is not to just slap portal walls all over maps. We want to make sure that we're making meaningful additions to the portals within these arenas, right? And so we've already started this work. We've done a bunch of passes. I think for the playtest, you're going to see core, frontier, and academy. We've made some really great changes in those maps, some really impactful new portal walls that really changed the way you play. I think academy in particular is one where there's whole areas of that map that play quite a bit differently because there are some new portal walls in there. So really excited for players to check this out and they start to feel like what we mean when we say we want some more impactful uses of portaling and not just we just slapped walls everywhere. But again, the intent of this is that you can see development out in public. And so we want to make sure that you understand what we're doing, why we're doing it. And so, yeah, you'll get your first hands-on with those new changes.
A few more things we can touch.
Really hope that these portal changes have a meaningful impact, because right now, again, going back to something that Zach's feedback, the Splitgate Pro, basically made me think of was, well, everything is just very, and again, this is me interpreting with my own words. I'm not speaking for him. I'm just saying that the portals in terms of their current iteration are very offense based. So I'm thinking we need some defense in order to balance that out. So this may be a partial solution, but maybe not a solution. I don't know. I just have a feeling that this could considerably make the game very unbalanced with the portals, because they're just I don't know. But at the same time, we got to play it. You can't say, but potentially, at least that's kind of my worry. So yeah, so let's keep it going.
Touch up on Ian, you mentioned the longer TTK. Why are we trying this direction out? And we can also dive into the weapon and recoil adjustments that we're targeting as well.
Yeah, I'm going to hand this one to Josh because Josh
Cool.
has actually been driving this forward. I can talk about weapon recoil in a bit, but I'll let Josh talk about the time to kill.
Time to kill is another one of those things, right? With any FPS, that is a very divisive topic, right? Like for half the people, it's too slow. For half the people, it's too fast. And so it's one of those things that you have to try to dial in, right? And so one of the things that's interesting about Splitgate, as compared to any other sort of shooter, is there are typically these sort of battle fronts, these front lines where you understand where your opponents are coming from. And what that allows you to do is you can be alert and ready for that attack more often than not, right? And so one of the challenging things with balancing around portals is it allows you to change the battlefront at will, which is really fun, but it also means it is very difficult to react to people flanking you, right? It is very difficult to acquire the target because they can come from virtually any direction. And so one of the things we've seen is a lot of people have felt as they play the game, it felt like whoever got the first shot off is going to win the game, right? Or is going to win the engagement. And so what we're trying with this pass, and again, we welcome all the feedback. We want to really hone in on this and dial it in. But the goal is we're trying to bump up the TTK so that engagements are a bit more meaningful and you can have meaningful gun battles. And it's not simply, okay, this person landed the first shot and they're going to win this engagement, right? And so it gives players the ability to try to figure out, do they want to disengage? Can they turn the tide by making sure that they're hitting more crits than the other player? There's a lot more, I wouldn't say a lot more. There's some more time to react, and And in testing that we've had so far, it's been really interesting to see how the engagements change a little bit, and it's not simply mowing through people and on to the next one, and it becomes more about sort of this one-on-one engagement. So really excited to get this into the players' hands. And like Ian said, and I want to reiterate, these are changes that we're testing. We want to hear your feedback. So please join in, tell us how you feel about it. And really, yeah, just try to, as you're playing it, try to think critically about how these things are making you feel and let us know, because we're very open to keep tuning and on our road to relaunch.
Okay, so the higher time to kill, as you saw in the little demonstration, is not anything too crazy. Now, I think if I remember properly, when I listened to this and watched it earlier, or should I say, listened to it as I was on my way home on the road on my way home. Ian, I believe, said that the difference between the time to kill is about 20% difference. So immediately I thought of Black Ops 3 to Black Ops 4. The health in Black Ops 3 was 100, and in Black Ops 4 it was 150. So if health right now, like let's say, is the equivalent of 100, they're basically going to 120. So it would be somewhere in the middle in terms of, like for instance, if you wanted to take an analogy, like it would be somewhere like it would be a slower time to kill than Black Ops 3, but faster than Black Ops 4. Like it would be right in the middle. I even remember hearing a few commentators out there talking about the time to kill, like them wanting it to be right in the middle would have been a perfect sweet spot. So I think this is Splitgate's version of a perfect sweet spot. I know that the time to kill is obviously not like it was in Black Ops 3 in this game already, before all this and stuff like that, before this playtest. But again, going back to like the percentage of differences, I think that's actually a welcome change. I think it favors people who are more consistent with their shots, and therefore, it goes back to that basic mentality of what a first-person shooter is. So, in terms of what makes the foundation of a first-person shooter, and portals being an additive as opposed to the end all be all. So I think potentially, at least on paper, this sounds good.
Yeah, and I'll just add one thing. It's not a crazy change. I think it's about a 20% increase on average. So it definitely does allow for that extra level of like flanking strategy, etc. But it's not, we're not doubling the time to kill by any means. It's still going to feel like Splitgate.
We almost actually tried to do double health in one of our internal playtests, and everybody was like, might be a little much.
But we tried a 50% boost, but that was definitely too much.
That's what it was.
So.
Yeah. So, but we'll see what the community likes.
One last thing I wanted to touch on, but recoil changes. We've heard a lot of feedback on the automatics in particular, especially assault rifles, and how the recoil, it's very shaky and just doesn't feel right. And so we actually just rewrote how the recoil works on automatics. And we did a pass on every gun. So they're all a little bit different. In general, a tad less recoil. So before, an automatic would go up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down. But the big thing, which I think a lot of players are going to be excited about, is recoil now only goes up. It feels so much better, and I didn't realize how annoying it was until now I go back to live. I'm like, man, now I get what people were complaining about. So I'm excited for people to test that change.
Basically, long story short, this is recoil that just kind of is a lot more familiar and makes a lot more sense to a lot of people, especially if they played other first-person shooters. So, and at the same time, if you looked at the whole up and down thing, like if you think about it, you could kind of still be on target, even though there's quote unquote recoil with the up and down. Now you actually, even though it's more predictable and you can control it, it still lets the player to like apply that control, but at the same time, it's also predictable. So therefore, in a way, it's I kind of want to say easier, I guess, but at the same time, it's like, okay, as opposed to randomness, it's more predictable, which is good across the entire board, whether you're talking, the super low skilled casual player, or whether you're talking about the the hardcore pro. I think this is a good move.
Change and it's still going to need lots of tweaking. Is it too much, too little, etc.? But I think it feels 1,000 times better.
So again, Friday, we have our first day for our public playtest. Ian, how are players able to get into the game? Do they have to get a separate branch on PC? Is it available to consoles? What's the gist there?
Unfortunately, the playtest is on Steam only.
Okay. He's gonna get into details as to all that stuff, but I don't know the technical specifics. I don't remember if he mentioned this or not. I don't know the technical specifics in terms of why console is limited, but I mean, let's just be real. The consoles, to my knowledge, right, in terms of everything with the very limited info that we have, the console versions of the game are the ones where you have the most population, right? Um, so I think it's a huge missed opportunity to not have this type of playtest on console for people to get their hands on it, like specifically for them, especially when the vast majority of them are on console. And on top of that, I think you also have a higher percentage of casual players that are also on console compared to Steam in terms of the overall number. So hopefully for future playtests, I really hope they're able to get the future playtests onto console as well, because that is extremely important. And I know they know that. There's no way that they don't, but by any means necessary, I think that's something that to where they really need to concentrate as much effort as possible, because that is a significant chunk of the player base. That is the majority chunk of the player base, unless I'm mistaken. But from everything we've been led to believe so far, consoles have a higher player base than the PC.
It's just a lot easier to conduct these things there. I wish it were easier to do on consoles. It will be streamable though, so any of you console players, like, we wish you could participate, but you can still tune in. It's going to be streamable. It's going to, people can make videos, etc. Talk about their impressions, but it's just going to be on a separate code of the same Steam app. So the Splitgate 2 beta app, we will post the code and instructions, but you can just switch branches, and you will have to download the updated branch.
Yeah, so that about wraps up this, I suppose, this week's update.
All right, so long story short, in closing here, this video has probably run way too long, but long story short, a lot of really good things, at least on paper right now. So we're just going to have to wait and see how it plays for those total of 6 hours between Friday and Saturday. So the only thing that I have to say that was a missed opportunity, unfortunately, is the fact that it's not on console. So hopefully, devs, I know you're listening. Please do everything within your power. I know it's, like you said, it's not easy, and I understand, but please do everything within your power to get the future playtests on console, because that is so important. I mean, not just because it's a big chunk of the player base, but also because, again, the more feedback you have across the board, the more of a precise relaunch you're going to have. So anyway, guys, with that being said, that was pretty much the quote unquote reaction and my feedback. And with that being said, please feel free to add in the comment section below. Remember, something that's on paper may not play as good as it sounds, or it may even play better than it sounds. So we basically have to get our hands on it. But with that being said, in terms of what you think, in terms of what this, how good this sounds, or if it doesn't sound good and all that kind of stuff, let your feedback be known down below. And obviously, after these things get played out, continue to let your thoughts be known down below. And with that being said, guys, thank you all for taking the time to watch and or listen. Thank you to the devs, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.